I'm going to welcome to the stage right now two remarkable women for a powerhouse conversation of the view from the East Bay. Please, Mayor Libby Schaaf and Jen Pahlka, come join the stage. There are a million things I can say about both the mayor and Jen Pahlka. Jen, as you know, is the founder and executive director of Code for America. Just to get started, there isn't a single topic that we have touched here over the past 2 days that Mayor Schaaf hasn't taken on in Oakland. And this is truly a force of nature. So I'm going to turn it over right now to Mayor Schaaf and Jen.
Great, thank you, wonderful. Welcome, thanks. Thanks, Mayor Schaaf, for being here. You're going to get a double dose of Oakland cheerleading today, for sure. I'm a very proud Oakland resident and just delighted that we can give a little bit of the perspective from what's going on in the East Bay. And you will see, I think, that it connects to everything we've been talking about the last day. So thanks for being here. So let's start off with something that I know I've heard you talk about so much that is so near and dear to my heart, both in the civic tech work that we do at Code for America and in how it affects the city where I live and our community. And that's certainly what's very apparent is a lack of equal access to technology in this community, in all communities around the country, and the impact that that can have. But you have been such a bright light around this and a clear voice for the other side of that, which is technology as a bridge between the equality gap in our communities. Can you talk a little bit about why you came to that framing and how it's going?
Oh, it's because you told me to come to that framing. No, Jen actually has been a real inspiration for me, both to take on the challenge of leading a city like Oakland and to do it with a spirit of innovation, but also some kind of, fierceness about the mission and what needs to be accomplished, and some of the great new tools to accomplish it. And so, I like to think about technology not just as kind of the shiny new app, but how it is impacting mindset in government. And that is sometimes one of the most important things about it. And I love what I was just hearing from Steve around scaling process and from Megan about the importance of inspiration and confidence. Jen once started a speech by talking about how government, I remember what you say, Jen, how government shouldn't be like a vending machine. It shouldn't be something where you put your money in and you get a candy bar out. That we should have a relationship with government kind of like we have with our phones. That government should be a platform that gets you what you need and is convenient and available to you and is useful to you in many ways. And so I wanted to, talk about kind of technology and government and give three kind of general examples. One is kind of platform thinking, which I like to liken to the phone versus the vending machine. The other is kind of human-centered design. And finally, this issue of transparency and trust. An example of platform thinking, Oakland is very proud to have an Oakland Promise program. You've probably heard of these, they're all over the country, but we're doing it radically differently. And it's because we're really employing platform thinking. So instead of just having a college savings account, like they do in Oakland, much to what Steve said about kind of scaling process, we can use the power of technology to kind of mass customize communication. And so this is not a savings account that just sits theoretically in a bank account somewhere far away. We're using it as a platform for teachers to talk about college education, for families to start bringing kids on field trips or talking about internships or job shadow days. We're using it as a platform for hope and expectation and culture transformation to create a college-going culture from the first day that kids walk into kindergarten. That is a whole lot more powerful than just a college savings account. And I might talk a little bit later about what we're doing around persistence support once kids get into college. Human-centered design. That, again, is a gift that technology is really bringing to shake up government. because it's not something we've been very good at. Code for America is definitely leading the revolution in that front. An example is our digital front door project, which we're doing with Code for America, recognizing that most people don't physically walk in the doors of City Hall. They usually access City Hall through this. And we've got to make it convenient and useful so that they can interact with their government in their pajamas on their couch at 1 in the morning, which is usually when I get around to paying my parking tickets. And yes, even the mayor has to pay parking tickets. We're also doing it through the creation of a Civic Design Lab. I think more governments need what companies have, in the form of like an R&D department. The Civic Design Lab is a place where we are re-engineering our processes and really using that human-centered design approach. Yeah. Great example. I don't know if you've heard that the Bay Area is having a housing crisis right now. Anybody heard that? I know the Oaklanders over there know about the housing crisis. Well, one of the things that we used to do is we have rent control in Oakland. But if you're a tenant and you think that your landlord has given you an illegal rent increase, under our old system, you had to go to your government and petition and essentially bring a complaint against your landlord. Now, how friendly does that seem? It was a completely paper-based system. And while we were getting more than 700 petitions a year claiming illegal rent increases, roughly a quarter of those would just disappear. And we never had an idea about whether these were resolved amicably, whether the tenant just gave up and moved. We didn't know. And so we brought this whole rent stabilization process through our Civic Design Lab so that 1, we now will have data. 2, we're creating a human-based experience that is less about winners and losers and more about reconciliation and compassion at a very stressful moment. And so by getting usual adversaries in a room together, like the landlords organization and our very radical tenant advocates in Oakland, and they are pretty radical, they actually came up with a system that they both acknowledged were better for both parties, human-centered design. And then the last piece I'll touch on is technology, and particularly open data, allows us to have a level of transparency with our residents that is critical. I don't need to, I'm sure I'm not going to be the last person to reference the recent national election, to say that it really said a lot about people's trust in government right now. And we really need to stand up and pay attention to that. And part of transparency in government is often laying bare some very uncomfortable facts. We are a very enthusiastic collaborator with the White House on the Transparent Police Data Initiative. And when you actually put out your data about how you do policing in community, it really exposes you to some very deserved criticism about I think the issue that is most at a tipping point in our nation's consciousness right now. But you cannot change something unless you see it. And transparency, by using technology, is both allowing us to start building that relationship of trust with our residents. And if they only see the good news, they're not going to trust that. So it's actually important to put out the bad news. But it also is the diagnostic tool that allows us to start fixing it. So those are some 3 things that I've been really excited about with tech and equity and opportunity.
The examples that you gave are so great because I think when you talked about government as a platform, by the way, thank you for crediting me with that. That actually came from Tim, and I think he stole it from someone else, Donald Kettle. It's one of those, it's sort of been passed along as a meme, but the government as a platform versus a vending machine. But he and I were talking this morning about this sort of, I think we're trying to somewhat stay off the topic of the election, believe it or not, but I will go back to that as well and say there has been some fundamental disjuncture between what we think we're doing in terms of a policy and the lived experiences of people. And that's come up on this stage over and over again yesterday and again today. your lived experience of police is going to be very different depending on who you are. We have a policy that says you're able to address a rent issue, but your lived experience of that is often so poor that you really don't feel like it's actually being taken care of. And this human-centered design thing for me is really, I think, the framework for it is how can we bring our intentions in policymaking to the people in a way that is actually true to what we were trying to do and actually works for them. We can't do that if we don't dig in and really see what does it look like from the bottom up.
And technology not only gives us that mindset, but it actually gives us tools to hear the lived experience from so many more people who often don't have access to City Hall through the traditional entry points.
Yes.
Now, Jen, I know you and your team at Code for America have been on a journey that's very parallel to ours.
Yes.
Obviously, we are great influencers of each other and very proud to name you as one of our residents. And we know that you started out with Code for America on this real transparency frame, this real participatory democracy frame. But you've been evolving into kind of building this digital bridge, and digital bridge. This idea that we're moving away from the divide to the bridge, that technology is actually a tool that can help drive equity, particularly for vulnerable people, just like my story about our tenants using the rent arbitration process. Now, how has that happened for you? How did that evolution happen, and what does that mean for people here?
Well, it's kind of like diving into a problem and then getting deeper and then deeper and then deeper. And Alan Williams is here, who's been on this project for, I guess, 2 years right now. But we started working in San Francisco, for instance, on food assistance. And it's exactly the same sort of pattern that we're talking about here, where we have a policy that says if you qualify, you should be able to get some help buying groceries. And in California, unfortunately, we are the second lowest state in terms of participation in SNAP, and I think that might have been referenced earlier yesterday as well. Because the lived experience of applying for the program, getting through the application process, staying on it is less than ideal. And I won't go into all the details then, but it starts with an online application form that's 52 pages long and asks a lot of questions that are kind of insulting and weird and hard to answer.
No wonder people are irritated with government.
No wonder people are irritated with government. So it's not that difficult, and many of you in the room who have tech background will know this, to make a better online application, which is something that Alan and his team did quite a while ago now. But that's just the beginning of the problem, because if you follow up with people who apply for food stamps, and again, to this digital bridge via text message, because that's where they are. You can't send them an email and ask them to go back to another website. Most of these people don't have access to broadband internet at home, but they do have their mobile phones. And you say, what happened next? Did you get the interview? Did you provide documentation? Did you make it all the way through? You find that a better front door doesn't get you all the way there. We found that people were finding out that they had an interview, which is one of the next parts of the process, but they got the letter in the mail, which is not easy for a lot of people. I don't open my mail on time, after the date of their interview. So of course they missed the interview, and then they have to start over at the beginning. So we've really evolved just through the work and through engaging with people and following up with them and really trying to document that user experience, in realizing that our special sauce, what we can really provide, is a view of that user experience. We can tell a county, hey, here are the 3 things that you need to be working on that aren't about technology. They're about operations and about the lived experience of trying to be on this program that actually will decrease the number of people falling out of your funnel and get more people on this program that is incredibly valuable. It's one of the programs that's most highly correlated with better health and education outcomes for kids. It's a crazy thing not to have people getting food assistance when they need it. And so we've really gone from this let's make a better app, which we do need to do, to let's fix the experience through data and through a deeper understanding of what users are actually going through.
And I love how you bring that spirit of disruption to things that matter, instead of just, as Frida Kapor would say, we don't need any more photo sharing apps. Let's hack poverty.
And by the way, we're going to be in Oakland real soon. We're onboarding Alameda County now, so
Yay!
food stamps for Oaklanders.
All right.
So, Libby, let's talk a little bit about the way that you have been using technology to create opportunities in Oakland, and that's what this is all about, that didn't even exist even just a few years ago.
Well, it is cool to see how technology has evolved, and again, the use of technology has evolved in a way that allows things that weren't possible even just a couple years ago. I don't know how many of you caught the breakout session yesterday that included kiva.org. But Oakland has partnered with Kiva in a big way because, let's face it, one of the barriers to opportunity is often low income and people of color and women entrepreneurs getting access to capital. That is well documented. Fewer than 2% of SBA loans went to African American owned businesses, and it's even worse than that if you look at venture capital. And it's exciting that Oaklanders like the Capors are trying to change that, but Kiva, through its platform, through crowdsourced lending in Oakland, we just made our 200th zero-interest loan. We have loaned more than $1 million to Oakland entrepreneurs. 83% of them are people of color. 64% of them are women. I think that deserves an applause.
Yes.
What I love about crowdsourced lending, and it is a loan, it's not, whatever, Indiegogo, it's not just a gift, it's a loan, you've got to pay it back, but that also kind of helps you start building your creditworthiness, is it also creates this network. And I have to say that as a community, it is so empowering to say, we can be the bank of Oakland. We can support our neighbors in their entrepreneurial dreams. And I'm excited, stay tuned, we're gonna be launching a youth ventures version of this in the coming weeks called the Emerging Oakland 100. You know about that? All right,
Yeah,
shout
Carla.
out. Oh, good. Okay, well, it's happening. Like, I am all in on this. We talk so much about job creation and getting people jobs. We forget that a great way to create jobs in your city is to create entrepreneurs in your city. And that often we underlook our communities of color, our youth, and these are incredible, just exploding bastions of creativity and talent. And so we are finding things like Kiva, which really is a technology platform that allows us to grow these businesses. It's super exciting. And I'll just also put a shout out, other kind of ways of using these types of crowdsourced platforms. Neighborly is trying to disrupt muni bonds. Like, wouldn't you like to participate in building a park in your community? Another one is Invest Us, is creating a platform to allow smaller donations to affordable housing projects, particularly things like teacher housing. I'm very excited about doing something like that in Oakland. And then finally, technology. I was talking about how the Oakland Promise is so much more than what typical Promise programs are. We also are partnering with organizations like East Bay College Fund and College Track to use technology. Again, it's like, mass customization. To use these kind of mentoring and persistence tools. I know iMentor is here. I know that Beyond 12 is here. Those are two tools that are currently being used in Oakland because we know, I just want this statistic to stick in your mind. I have a city full of brilliant young people, but of my 9th grade class right now, only 10% of them will have a college degree 5 years after high school. 10%. In this knowledge-based economy, that is a crime. We also know that of the kids, particularly low-income kids, first in their families, that go to college, only 20% of them are finishing. That means 80% of our low-income students are accumulating educational debt and getting no degree. This is horrible. But we know that with persistent support, with a mentor, with the type of coaching and support, it's not just money, and clearly it's not just brains. They've got the brains. It is that social emotional support that we've seen creates the difference between that 20% graduation rate and more than an 80% graduation rate with groups like College Track and East Bay College Fund that are using technology tools like Beyond 12 and iMentor to create that personal coaching even at long distances. That is something that was not possible a few years ago. And talk about driving opportunity with tech. That is the thing that makes me the most excited.
See, and that to me is so important, because when people hear Oakland and tech right now, they think Uber, right? They think, okay, and Uber is coming to Oakland and that's the opportunity. And I love that they're coming to Oakland and it's awesome. But we can't just have this big tech company come in and have it be disconnected from the community. And all of those things are going to make Oakland a place where those kids can grow up and get that job. But more importantly, like you said, where it's not just Uber dominating the economy, where there's an opportunity for Oakland-grown companies from our diverse and beautiful community, where the startups are Oaklanders.
Well, and I know that Code for America has been doing some great job training work in New Orleans, and I'm interested in hearing more about what Oakland could learn from Code's work in New Orleans.
I will. Before we go to that, though, I want to also just mention that Catherine Bracey, I think, is here.
She is.
Who's working on the Tech Equity project to make sure that as the nature of our city changes, that we retain our culture and our diversity and the opportunity for everybody there.
Another kick-ass Oaklander, if I may say.
So in terms of opportunity for everyone, we, as you know, do these projects all around the country, and some of them are sort of experimental and will grow into the kinds of projects at scale that we have been doing, like the SNAP. But one that was an experiment this year was with the city of New Orleans, where it's really essentially the same problem. You're offering a service like job training, but the lived experience of it is that you walk into an opportunity center and you think you're going to get job training or even a job, and what you get is waiting in a long line and then asked to bring back a whole bunch more documentation, and then you will return possibly 7 or 8 times before you'll even find out what you would be eligible for. And so I won't go into the details, but this is the same basic idea of like capture users, find out what's happening to them, and then work with the government to just systematically remove those barriers can be applied in this area too, which is critical, because if we're going to actually offer people job retraining, we have to get them from point A to that job retraining and know what's actually working without the 17 different ways that you can just decide not to continue and persist through this incredibly bureaucratic process. So we would love to bring that to Oakland someday too.
All right, bring it on, sister.
All right, one last question, and I think we're just about out of time, but can you briefly tell us what the City of Oakland's moonshot is?
So, I hope one of you out there has the incredible experience of being the mayor of your hometown. And one of the challenges you have every year is you have to give a State of the City address. And this year my theme was moonshot thinking. And it was actually inspired by, I don't know if Megan Smith even knows this, she did a short little YouTube video about moonshot thinking. That we have to be bold in our thinking and not just tolerate incremental improvement, that 10% improvement, but 10 times. And, my moonshot for Oakland is really the equity agenda. This idea that every person, regardless of whatever status traditionally has been a barrier, that every person is healthy in body and mind, has housing and income security, is safe from the fear or harm of crime, has every opportunity and achieves all the education and wisdom that they can stand. That's the moonshot thinking, but we're not going to see that type of transformative change without the disruptive power of technology. And that's why in Oakland we do talk about tequity. We do talk not only about our expectation that technology be more reflective of our values, be more inclusive, be more diverse, be more mission-driven, and hack on the problems that matter, but also that we harness its power to achieve that transformational change. That is my moonshot for Oakland.
I'm so glad. I'm so glad that you are our mayor and that you bring those values, and that you don't just bring the values, but you bring the oomph and the follow through and the vision and the implementation to make them happen. We have so much more to do, but thank you
Well, and
for
I'm going to be here
everything.
for the rest of the day. I know there are so many fantastic people. I saw Linda, the MBK initiative, and Bloomberg support. I mean, just please, I'm here for the rest of the day. Pull me out of this room and let's have a cup of coffee.
Great.
Oakland is the place to get this stuff done. We have the political will, we have the passion, and we have the brilliance right in our boundaries. So thank you, and this is a great conference.
Thanks for coming, Libby.
Great.